In this video, I show you how I planned and progressed a very fast direct ink drawing of Notre Dame Cathedral. The actual drawing took me 20 minutes to draw. This video is in double time, and I give a commentary explaining how I go, what I do, why I do it, and you can see for yourself. I drew this same scene in pencil on a trip to Paris some years ago. I spent about an hour and a half, so I was curious to see now, after all these years of drawing since, how I would go doing a really quick gestural ink drawing of the same scene. I start in the center. I find that starting in the center in a quick gestural drawing like this gives me the most chance of keeping the whole thing in proportion, because I'm not going too far in any one direction from my starting point, and that helps me keep things accurate. As always, I'm drawing these first parts fairly carefully and seeking to get them fairly accurately in proportion to each other, because I'll be using these to measure the rest of the building and the scenery off in all directions. So I recognize that this large rose window is probably going to be the most difficult, time-consuming thing to draw. I probably draw it in too much detail. If I were doing this again, trying to achieve a slightly lighter touch, I think would be a helpful thing. However, it gets me drawing, and I still do have to draw it extremely quickly for my 20-minute time limit. This video is in double time, so I'm actually drawing at half this rate, and the drawing was finished in 20 minutes exactly. I stopped, like it or not, when the timer was up. So I go around this rose window, and now I'm thinking I'll keep going straight up and get this part of the building drawn, this transept end. The important thing is to capture the feel of the Gothic architecture rather than the exactness of it. There are all little pointy bits and little bits that stick out and bibs and bobbles everywhere, and this is the feel we want to capture in some quick lines that don't have to be super accurate, as long as they capture the effect and the feel of what we're trying to do. It's important that these architectural elements that are symmetrical also follow the same perspective lines that the sides of the buildings and the roof lines follow as well, such as spires that are on either side of a gable end. There's another rose window here, unfortunately. I managed to get this one done with a lighter touch, and it's becoming easier now to work quickly. I keep looking at the clock because 20 minutes isn't very long. There's a lot of line and texture to get done. But I'm imagining that I'm standing back on this bridge corner in Paris, and that I've only got 20 minutes before I have to leave this spot forever. And this will be my capture of this landmark. There's also a sense of capturing a bit more detail, a bit more carefully in the parts that are closest, and drawing with a lighter touch for further away things. I don't change to a finer pen, as I often do for the further away things in this scene, but just the fact that I draw the further away things faster means that the line is lighter and thinner than these more carefully considered lines at the start. I start to outline some of this tree shape because it takes up a lot of the foreground, which was, I must admit, part of the appeal of this scene. Work at getting the roof lines done. I'm still using my pen to measure perspective angles because it's simply the fastest way to get it accurate. I often do a center line, particularly as in this case, where the spire itself and the line work of it will completely cover the center line. It's not going to be a problem. It's really important to try and get these spires straight, and as I often do, where there are stacked shapes, I draw them stacked on top of each other. But again, it's important that they don't sort of wobble and look like they're falling off each other. Now, I'm working really hard at this spire just to capture the feel of the line work and the open spaces and the silhouette. Silhouettes are particularly important in this sort of work because silhouettes are always very visually prominent. So it's important to give our brain the information that it gets from a silhouette. that'll do for this point. So now a little more detail on the roof. I'm aware that once I leave a section, I may not have time to come back to it, so I'm decide to just work on this right hand side where there's not too much detail, but I wanted to give a little bit more of the top of the wall and that hint of a flying buttress and one of the large lancet windows down the side. So I just do that, and then I can kind of cover it up with some very, very fast tree work, some very fast leaf work. The important thing is to get the perspective lines correct. A lot of the other lines can be very loose and very suggestive, but if the perspective lines aren't in the right place, they will simply look wrong, regardless of how loose a drawing style we've used elsewhere. So I decide to do the right-hand side tower at this point, because that will help me position the left-hand tower more. I can use that negative space between the two towers as part of my guidance of where to put that other tower. It also gets me warmed up just in drawing these sorts of shapes of the medieval architecture that's used here. Now I align the various horizontal levels with what I've already drawn. Very important. So it would be easy to get bogged down with all of these buttresses in the lower half of this tower, where they come down and then they angle out and come down and angle out again and come down and angle out again. It's fairly time consuming to get that drawn accurately, and I only have minutes at this stage. I think I've got, 6-7 minutes left of my 20-minute deadline at this point. So I really have to just suggest all of that. I'm drawing a lot of the detail by simply doing the shadows, and I'm letting the shadows suggest the form to our minds. So I'm hoping that's going to work, because I simply don't have time to draw all of the detail that's in here. And these lower buttresses that come off the nave in this section here, they are really just suggested. I'm not lining things up at all. I'm drawing the various rows of horizontal elements on top of each other, but I'm not aligning them. And I think the effect works. I think it looks, our mind expects to see that, and so it just presumes it's there. And it gives the sorts of pointy shapes and other elements of Gothic architecture. And that's the trick in these really fast gestural drawings, to suggest things that we don't actually draw. I had hoped to put a bit of hatchwork on this, but there just wasn't time for it in the end to keep it within the 20 minutes. And I really wanted to have that discipline of 20 minutes. So now I'm going further up this tower, and I'm aligning with the tower I've already drawn, how high it has to be. This has got those two very large, clear, dark areas where the sounds of the bells ring out from. And so I want to get those and just get that perspective angle correct, because we're not looking at these straight on. So I have to get the angle of the line work correct. Now there is this branch that comes out very close to where I was standing when I took this photo. This is a bit frustrating because there's a fair bit of work, and it's not part of the cathedral, but I do think it's an important element visually of the scene. And so I do spend some frantic time doing that, about as fast as I've ever done it in my life. And very aware of the clock now. There really are just a couple of minutes to go in my 20 minutes. So I'm working out what do I need to put before I have to stop. I just check over the cathedral. I've got these statues of the apostles, which very fortunately were spared from the fire because they were taken down for refurbishing just before. A few more details on the roof, and then I'm going to see out my time by concentrating just now on this very large few trees here, and then the foreground. I'm glad I do have time just to draw in the top of the embankment of the Seine, and very quickly do this shade. I would have liked to have done this hatching for the shadows a little more carefully, but in some ways, the looser lines, the further we move away from the focal point of the scene, I think the better it works. I'll post this drawing on my community page, and so if you'd like to have a go seeing how much you can draw directly in ink in 20 minutes, you can set the timer and you can race me. Hope you have fun. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. This sort of really fast ink drawing of a fairly complex scene is not something I really do. I had a lot of fun pushing myself in this way. Doing something a bit different can be a really good thing to do in our art. That can include the time we give ourselves to do it. There certainly comes a freedom from being overly cautious when you're on the clock. As I said in the video, I'll put this reference photo on my community page, and if you want to have a go drawing it, feel free to download it, print it off and draw it. It's my photo, there's no problem with you doing it. And if you do it and you want to post your artwork on Instagram, please tag me so that I get to have a look at it as well. And if you find these videos a help, then please help me with these videos and leave comments and like and subscribe and hit notifications and do all the other things that will help the YouTube algorithm look favorably on me. The important thing is to keep drawing, have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.